We're here with
Wet Your Palate.
another Wet Your Palate. So, what you are going to be introduced to on this episode of Go With Your Palate is going to be a harvest update about the 2023 vintage.
Yes.
And it's a great story that dives into some previous vintages and some of the difficulties we've had and what we've learned over time and whatever the hell else we want to talk about.
We also talk about cold showers.
Cold showers, the
Yo,
Iceman.
dude, what's going on with the Iceman, dude? We're giving props to Wim Hof.
Horrible bosses. This one turns out could be a relative of Hillary Clinton. So,
Okay, can we don't. You just mentioned that at the
That's
end.
it.
We were gonna cut it, dude.
Wet
and
Your
now
Palate.
we can't because you put it on Wet Your Palate.
enjoy.
So tell us about. You have a new coffee drink though.
So yeah, I don't know what the name is. I'm sure somebody out there knows what the name is, but you'd put like a little bit of like raw sugar in there. I use like the El Peroche sugar.
The what?
I'm not gonna say it again. Okay, don't even try.
Why, dude? Your Spanish is good.
And then you take like orange zest, right? So just
Orange
like
zest,
the peel,
yep.
like just the very outer layer of the peel.
Mm-hmm.
Cinnamon
Cinnamon.
to taste, whatever you like. If you like it heavy cinnamon, if you like it light. And then you make like a double shot of espresso on top of all that, and then just mix it in.
Yeah.
And a little bit of cream if you so desire. And it is like, it's great. And it smells awesome. Tastes great. Like it's the orange and cinnamon thing, like with the bitterness and like a little bit of sweetness, it's like perfect. It's great. Great little wake me up in the morning.
Okay, so you do this like this is like your morning. It's part of your morning routine.
Yeah, but I'm going to try to get into this sparkling water plus coffee. This is is this like a European thing? Did it start in? Like I would guess that it probably started in the UK because they have horrible taste. Like in general. Dude, come on. You know you go to London, right? And
wait, we're gonna talk about
the only good food there is fucking Indian food, and it's great Indian food, but like there's not really any good like.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Hey,
it's just,
I mean, what's
do you trust cultures that have
they
bad
do?
teeth?
They do
they
bangers and mash.
Bangers and mash. Yeah,
Have you had bangers and mash?
yeah, Chris. It's sausage and mashed potatoes.
What I mean, UK style.
I do have to. Yes, I have like the baked beans.
Yes.
Also, yeah. Have you ever seen Get Him to the Greek, the movie with Russell Brand?
Yeah, and Jonah Hill.
Yeah, I had never seen it until like a week ago, and Rachel's like, "You got to see this." I was like, "Okay, fine." And
Yeah, because they're bringing it back. Wait, were you at Netflix?
Yeah, and so like we watched it, and he's got this song like towards the end where it's like super just all innuendo, all sexual innuendo, and it's like talking about like. Come over for my bangers, beans, and mash. And I look at Rachel and I was like, you get this, right? Like, it's the bangers, the sausage, the beans, the balls, and the mash.
Wait, what was her reply when you turned to her like, did you get this?
She was like, yeah, Joe, I get it. I was like,
like, I would have too. She was probably like, yeah, dude, I get it. Jesus, have a little bit more faith, bro.
So bangers and mash. And you got Gordon Ramsay, who, you know, he's a good chef.
Yeah.
Good beef Wellington.
He's
Holy
good.
shit, his beef Wellington. Now, there's
Hell
one
yeah.
thing I think that might have come out of the UK. Beef Wellington, one of my favorite things. Like, if it's done right, it's fucking amazing.
I told you I'm a fan because he's actually like a nice guy.
Yeah, actually, he just puts on that front of being like a total ass.
And
So
he's polite. I mean, that's cool.
we had the honor of being the by the glass pour at Hell's Kitchen, the Quilt Cab.
Whoa, what?
So what they do is they do this like this it's like mostly for lunch.
Yeah.
They're like I was in the one in Vegas, fucking huge. Like so, but all the Hell's Kitchens were pouring the glass pour of Quilt Cab with the 3-course meal, which was. I can't remember what the starter was. It was like his staples, but the main course was his beef Wellington, which went great with the cab, and then a dessert, right? So I'm talking to the server, and I'm like, how many of these like beef Wellingtons do you guys put out a day? Because like you can order it a la carte too, but you could tell people like most people are in there. They're just like, yeah, I'll just do the staple, the 3-course Gordon Ramsay certified fucking hell yeah, with the Quilt Cab. And they were going through Quilt Cab like crazy. I asked the server how many beef Wellingtons they do. He's like, between 1,500 and 2,000 a day at one location. One fucking location, dude. I was like, how do you even, like, I just wanted a tour of the kitchen to see how they did that. How do you do that many?
You've done beef Wellington yourself, right?
Yeah, it's hard, dude. It's not an easy thing to make.
I have not. Big surprise. But I know that you have, and like that's what I was thinking. But doesn't it take a lot? Like, how can you? Don't you need a lot of? Wouldn't you need a lot of equipment? Kind of go in there, right? I mean,
no. If you just do it like traditionally, you don't need a lot of equipment. No. I got a feeling
I like the way you look at me.
Like, yeah, I got a fucking industrial
does it
kitchen.
take a lot of equipment to like? You have like these machines to stuff it in there?
Yeah, at first it comes in a truck, and then you put it in you pile it up with a bulldozer, and then it's all that
Dude,
kind of stuff.
It's this fucking coffee. It's going to my head, dude. This sparkling shit. Anyways,
thanks for sharing your UK culture coffee here.
Well, let me just welcome you to Go With Your Palate.
Welcome to Go With Your Palate. It's me, Joe Wagner, and my sidekick, Chris, Fat Mario Rubio.
Where we talk about wine,
entrepreneurship, and
whatever the fuck
else.
Which we were kind of just starting there, so I hope you enjoyed it. Just to circle back really quick, because I like it that, with you went over your coffee drink. Is there anything you like to take in the morning for your part of your routine? Because I remember
I've been taking like a couple different multivitamins.
A couple? Why a couple?
Like it's funny. Not a lot of multivitamins have magnesium in them. And I want some,
magnesium.
So I have one that is literally like, I think all the other vitamins and minerals in that one are just like whatever. I get them from the other multivitamins.
Yeah.
But there's the one that has a high dose of magnesium.
Okay.
So that's it. Just like trying to, stay healthy, make sure my body's in balance and all that.
And are you taking lion's mane, ashwagandha?
No ashwagandha. I'm doing lion's mane.
So you're getting into the shrooms.
Yeah.
What gets you started? What gets you prepared for what we're in now? Fucking harvest, bro.
Dude, you gotta stay healthy.
Yeah, but like this is a wild. I feel okay.
You could tell that it's harvest because do you see all of this? Crazy shit coming out of my face.
This happens to you every year.
You just gotta let it go.
You're kind of like a harvest werewolf. Well, you're always kind of like I feel like you're always still like mid werewolf all the time, but then you go full during harvest.
Yeah, I'm just letting it go.
It really comes out, and you're like howling all the time because
at some point when you like let your mustache grow long enough and you can't even see your lips. Like it's like it's not a good look.
So harvest update. That was a big point of.
Let's jump into a harvest update because this is a funky year. It's if somebody's listening to this 5 years down the road, we are in the vintage of 2023.
Yes,
and it is mid-October, and we literally just started picking. Like we are so far behind an average schedule. So why is that? Well, we had a lot of water this last winter.
Yes.
And it was a pretty wet spring, pretty cold spring. Yep. The vines were slow and late to wake up. So, that kind of sets us already on a course for being a later harvest. Then we had a very cool year overall. I mean, it was, but there were some really weird things that we saw out in the vineyard. An example would be like, we always wait for copper cane, that full lignification of that cane so that like all of the green is kind of purged out of the vine and the wine. And so I was down at a vineyard in Monterey, and this is the first place I saw it. So we were going through veraison, and that's where you start to see like sugar distribution to the berries. You start to see some color get into the berries as well. And usually that's about the time that you start to see the beginning of that copper cane at the very base of the cane, and then slowly migrates up to the very tip. So we're going through veraison. I'm looking at these vines, and like the lower leaves are already yellowing, like they're going into fall. Like this is the very beginning of the ripening process, and it's almost fully lignified. Like we're almost full copper cane, right? And we got like 5 bricks or something like that. Usually we pick 25 or more bricks, right? So I'm like, oh, this is gonna be a weird fucking year. So then we were monitoring, we're tasting. The funny thing that happened or started to happen, and we noted it in maybe 3 weeks ago or so, was that our acids were actually dropping pretty heavily, which is like that was not expected. Acids were remaining really high, and pHs were climbing. Well, the sugars were still low, so we're like 22 bricks. We started picking shit at like 24, 23 and a half because it was ripe and ready to go. And those wines, like they're already almost done with fermentation. They taste great. Then we had this massive heat spike down in the Central Coast, what we call the Santa Ana winds coming from inland.
Yeah.
And it's like a fucking like oven. And so hottest place, I think it was last Friday, hottest place in the United States was Santa Maria Valley at 107 degrees. And
Holy shit! I had no idea it got that hot.
It was fucking hot.
When was this? You said
last Friday.
Last Friday it was 107 there in Santa Maria.
We picked all through the weekend, and then a cooling spell started. So we're still picking like crazy right now.
Holy moly.
But that just kind of like popped everything up. And I'm not kidding. Like we went from, in some cases, like 24 bricks to 28 within like 2 days. Like that's a huge jump. So you got to think like you're in a furnace and these grapes are like, they're on the cusp of being ripe. And then all of a sudden you get this heat wave come through and it just concentrates everything. So those wines are actually turning out really good too. We like still have those in tank, just started fermentation on some of those. Overall, I'd say it's a very late year. We got good weather ahead. I think we're going to be picking into November, which is not a bad thing if the weather holds out. We had like, a little teeny tiny bit of rain like early on this week, and then that kind of cooled everything down. So we're seeing now like a separation between what the early picked stuff and what was ready early, or earlier, relatively speaking, versus what's going to come in next, which will be mostly cab. So we want this separation so that, we can focus on the Pinots, and then once we finish those, we can get those in barrel and then focus on the cabs. So not a bad vintage, a funky vintage. Like it'll be one that goes down as kind of like, there's some weird anomalies that have occurred that I've never seen in my 20-plus year career. 2011 was probably the closest. Yeah. But 2011 ended with like just rain upon rain, like all through October. It was wet. We had berries literally just falling off the vine. You'd like shake the vine, like hit it, and it would rain down berries because you started getting mildew issues. And it was eating the union, what we call the peduncle. And that's a really sexy word, peduncle.
Oh, dude, I gotta. I'm sorry, I gotta just write that one down.
But like if
peduncle,
so if you buy like table grapes, right, and you pull one of those table grapes off the stem, you'll see that there's like a shaft that was going into the grape itself that was holding the grape to the stem. A
shaft that goes into the grape itself.
And so it was eating that part of it, so the berries would just fall right off the vine. So it was the messiest, hardest harvest I've ever had. So this is like 2011. But with a happy ending. Like that's what it's shaping up to be. And 2011
2011 goes down in the books as your the hardest harvest.
For me.
For you that you experienced.
Yeah. Pinots were awesome in 2011. Cabs were a huge challenge. Because we just didn't get like the pyrazines. It was so underripe and you're picking when you can and stuff. And those wines turned out to be really good, like age-worthy wines. But at the moment when you're tasting them, you're like, there's something missing. They just weren't like full and rich and forward. So they've aged really well, and you can go back to like 98, the 98 vintage, also being a pretty cool year. And people like wrote that vintage off. They're like, garbage vintage, don't even buy it. Well, the people that bought into it and cellared it, like those wines started to just catch fire like 10 years after they were bottled. And they're still tasting good. They hold up like. And then 97, sorry, I'm like getting all into these.
No, but it's actually cool that you have all this like in your fucking noggin, dude. Like
so 97 was a big vintage and a really warm one. So you had like everything was super forward. It was on full display, super showy wines, and everybody was like lauding them, just like, oh my god, this is the vintage of the century. And the wines were phenomenal, but they fucking fell apart within a couple years of bottle aging. So it's funny to like, depending on what is it you're going for when you're making a wine. And if you're the one saying like, well, I want to grow in a region that's going to make wines like 2011, like 2023, that are going to be age-worthy for a long period of time, but really don't hit their stride until they've been bottle aged for, a good, almost decade or more. Or do you want to find a balance between those two, or do you want to be full, like fruit forward? Like it kind of partly is a decision, but then the decision relies upon where you grow the grapes. So are you growing them in a warm climate, or are you growing them in a cooler climate, like something that's just barely above the threshold of maturity? So all that stuff plays a role. But I mean, overall, like 2023, I think it's going to be a real, like the color coming out of these grapes is like, it is dark. And I went through, we smell our tanks on a daily basis. So I went through and like even this morning, like holy shit, these like ferments taste or smell phenomenal. Like you go through, we smell the tanks multiple times a day, looking for any flaws or any sulfite issues that might be arising or whatever it might be. But overall, we're smelling through and it's just like dark fruit, richness, meatiness, just vibrant. Like the colors are bright purple. You're like, this is looking really good. And the first wines that have come out of fermentation are looking really good too. And the whites are good too.
And when you said like the color is really dark, so that's something that obviously that you're looking for the darker, like the darker the color, you're thinking is like the better. Like,
just
where's the connection with that?
So like overall, like as you get through vintages and everything, you'll have challenges every vintage. But like when we're picking, like obviously we're out in the field, we're checking the sample or checking the blocks, tasting them, like macerating the skins to see what kind of color uptake we're getting or how much is coming out. But then once we get it in the winery, like once you're starting fermentation, once you get it in a tank, so like take Pinot Noir, you can tell within a day. You're like, oh, it's kind of milky, it's lighter, it's kind of pink, or it's like this is just bleeding color, and that tells you that they're like whatever happened this year. Because I was really concerned when I saw that first vineyard like going through variation. Yeah, I was like, this is not normal. This could be like a really bad thing, in the sense of like, are we going to be picking at a low level of like sugar maturity because we're already at physiological maturity, and is that going to sacrifice some of the color? Well, it turns out that no, that wasn't the case. Whatever the hell the vines did, whatever Mother Nature gave them in the last like month, they're dark as shit.
And you're still like going with your philosophy of, I know you like to like have a little more hang time. Oh yeah, every year, right? So you still keep that consistent. Oh yeah. No matter what is happening with Mother Nature every year, you're still looking for that late hang time and those dimples. I
think the extended hang time is just a byproduct of our core philosophy of when to pick, right? So like it's not like we're saying, okay, everybody else is picking right now, so we got to wait 2 weeks. It's more like, okay, everybody's picking, like pretty normal. Where are we at? What do we think? Like, have we fully lignified off? Or the thing we were waiting on this year more than anything was the seeds. So it seemed like we had full copper cane, but the seeds still had some green streaks in them. So we're like, all right, well, let's wait. And then finally it was like, okay, tastes good, like numbers look good, like not everything's perfect, right? Like maybe it seemed like a little lower sugar than what we would typically do. Now, as we've waited and we got through that heat spike, and that's a little higher sugar than we usually do. But physiologically, like they're ready. And so it just takes experience. Like every year you get accustomed to what you see, and you just kind of relate back to that. So like this year is a very dark year. We've only brought one pick of cab in so far. That was out in Woodin Valley. That was like a little, like, just like an experiment.
Oh yeah. So, sorry, because I heard something really interesting last week, and I want to touch on it too. So I believe the cab. You said you just brought in cab. Yeah. So I think for people that may not know, but there is a sort of timeline that we go through with harvest and different varietals and grapes. Yeah. So very generally, white comes first, red comes second.
Very generally, yeah.
And then if we're going to go down into the details of it, you can actually say what varietals. For example, if you're talking about reds, Pinot is going to come before Cabernet.
Yeah, so typically, and part of it does rely upon where you grow the fruit, right? But like, given that we know kind of Pinot Noir thrives in more cool, temperate coastal areas of California, Cabernet would be really green if you grew them in those areas. So Cabernet does better in like not too hot, but warm enough to get ripe, right? So like Napa, parts of Sonoma County, parts of the Central Coast like Paso, where you have these big swings. That's a big part of it. Daytime highs to nighttime lows. Yeah. But you're hitting like, say, an average of 90 degrees during the day. Whereas with Pinot Noir during like the summer months, we're probably hitting mid to high 70s, right? So just imagine that, right? Now you're growing grapes, and you could just say grapes are grapes are grapes are grapes. Well, Pinot Noir is an early season varietal, ripens really early. So if you look at reds, we're going to say, well, if we grew Cabernet and Pinot Noir side by side in Napa Valley, we'd probably pick Pinot Noir like a month before, maybe even 6 weeks before we even touch Cabernet, because it ripens that early. Now, you put it in a cool area, it still ripens early, but it does have the opportunity for hang time and development on the vine, and that's what we're looking for. So that's where you want that kind of like, you want to match the varietal with the right climate. So if I were to break it down by kind of like how our picks go, it starts off with sparkling, but that's more because we're picking that at a low level of sugar. That has nothing to do with copper cane. That's really all about like, you want to be 18, 19 bricks because you don't want the alcohol to be too high in sparkling. And it's a pretty simple process. And if you're like doing Pinot for a Blanc de Noir, you don't want it ripe. You don't want a lot of color to bleed out of that. So Blanc de Noir is like, you would think you're going to be getting like a rosé.
Yeah.
But that's not the case. You're getting like generally just clear, clean juice.
Yeah.
So start with sparkling, then we move into the lighter whites that ripen earlier that we want to pick a little earlier too, like Sauvignon Blanc, Gewürztraminer, Albarino, some of those. But Sauv Blanc probably being like the biggest, most notable here in California. And then you'll jump into Pinot Noir, being your first reds, and that'll follow up with maybe some of the Rhone varietals, Grenache, Syrah, and then as you move, and Zinfandel, and then as you move a little bit further into harvest, you start to see, depending on where your Chardonnay is grown, because Chardonnay here in Napa, like we started picking that, right about the same time we were picking Pinot on the Central Coast. But then we've also got some Chardonnay out in like Sonoma or down in Santa Maria, and those are in cooler climates, and so we haven't picked those yet. So then you'll have kind of like the call it the cleanup of the later season Chardonnays, and right about that same time your Cabs start to get ripe in Napa. So it kind of has this like even flow, generally speaking. And one of the things is like when you design a winery, you're looking at like how many turns of these fermentation tanks am I wanting to get? Some people will push and be like, if you're making like $2 chuck, you're gonna be like 6 to 7 turns, meaning you're using that tank 6 to 7 times. You're running through fermentations quick, just turn and burn, like 3, 4, 5 days. You crush, inoculate, do your fermentation, all automated, all that stuff, and you make a bunch of plonk. It's not like good stuff, but still, it goes into some bottle that goes into a store and somebody buys it, and it could be
a bunch of plonk.
Plonk. I think it's a UK term actually. It means shitty liquid. So
I like it. I make it shitty liquid.
So for us, like we like to look at it more from say like a 2-turn perspective, right?
Yeah.
So we can slowly do our fermentations and really take our time and coax out all those characters. Pinot Noir is a pretty fast fermenter when you let it. So we do our cryo extraction and our cold fermentation, suppress that yeast from being overly vigorous and converting all that sugar to alcohol really fast. So we, instead of being like a 5 to 7 day period of active fermentation, we can get that to like 3 weeks and then add cold soak and whatever else on the front end. And so you end up having like, let's call it a month that you're going to be filling those tanks with predominantly Pinot. And then as Pinot Noir is winding down throughout the state from a picking perspective, Cabernet is just ramping up typically. And I'll relate this to 2023 in a minute. Yeah. But Cabernet is just ramping up typically. And that's going to spend probably 6 weeks, if not 8 weeks in tank. And so that's kind of like our last use of those tanks. And that works out perfect. Cab ferments slower. It also generally sees quite a bit more what we call extended maceration. So after primary ferment is done, there's no more sugar to ferment. Then we leave it on skins for a period of time, just trying to soften the tannins out. And that's really a taste thing. You just taste every day and you're like, ready to drain. No. And then maybe one day you're like, yeah, this is tasting on point. Let's drain it and get it in a barrel. So that's kind of how it is. Now, 2023, what was coming was that all of these early season varietals and like Pinot Noir being a big tranche for us. So we do a lot of Pinot.
Yeah.
So it was being pushed back. And then you're like, okay, well, if I need 4 weeks in a tank and we're going to be picking everything, say, finish up Pinot Noir by, I don't know, pick a date, say October 20th. And then add 4 weeks to that. That puts your next fill at like mid-November. And we usually don't pick into November.
Yeah.
So we're usually done picking by mid to late October. And then it's fermentation finish up. And then you're going to go, okay, now we're picking mid to late November. And we're going to be seeing, let's call it 8 weeks at the outside. So that puts you into the new year for when you're draining and pressing. And so it's kind of like everything's delayed. It's just a funny dynamic. But what with this rain and this cool spell we are going through right now, it has separated things, but in a good way, because now we don't need to rush to pick off the cab. Now we're just kind of chilling. And we're like, okay, let's let it hang out there. It's getting better, tasting better. Not quite there. We're going to start picking a little bit of cab next week, but and we've done 1 pick of cab in a very, warm climate.
Which brings me back to so last week there was a situation, right, where you had a load of Chardonnay coming in, a load of Pinot Noir coming in, and a load of Cabernet coming in.
Yeah.
Which is, now would you say that's kind of not the norm of
that's not the norm. I mean, you might have a couple overlaps like that, but yeah, this year everything was getting really consolidated. And then you look at like, well, are we just going to hold our breath and hope that we don't get rain? And that's kind of what we have to do right now. But dude, the forecast looks great. It looks really good.
It does. It's weird because there's still like these like heat spikes that are coming in, which I think is just like, you know, like next week it's going to be high 80s.
Yeah.
What? It's like we're still trying to experience like fall. And I was going to say too, I mean, when you say you do a lot of Pinot Noir, I mean, you have your vineyards in Oregon.
Yeah.
So I was like thinking too, with this like season, you're also dealing with the different climates of these different states.
You know, what was really weird about Oregon was it was a warm ass year up there. Like it was. So California was cool. Oregon was riper than California Pinot. Oregon Pinot was ahead.
Whoa.
Which I've only been working in Oregon since like 2012, but like I've never seen Oregon Pinot Noir be ahead physiologically and sugar-wise over anything in California. So we actually started picking Oregon way earlier than we did Cwilliamania. I mean, like Oregon's almost done.
Wow.
So and it's good. I mean, no complaints. They did get a little rain up in like the Willamette, but most of our stuff had already been picked off. But Pinot can weather like maybe 2 storms, like 2 real storms, depending on kind of what comes after that. Like if it's a storm and then hot weather, and then you have like perfect scenarios for like mildew to grow. Yeah. then it sucks. But Pinot can handle a couple of rains. Cabernet can handle 3, 4, depending on just I think what the dynamics are. But so once you see that, I mean, I'd like to say like after 1 rain, if Pinot needs to hang out, like don't risk it on the second, because it just might fall apart. And when Pinot falls apart, it falls apart really fast. It's a thin skin, and it just is a fucking mess. Like, I mean, I'm going back to like earlier in my career. I remember like we had it might have been 2011, and Zinfandel. Zinfandel's kind of similar to Pinot in that way. And we just weren't like, we were waiting and waiting and waiting on the Zin, and we had all this rain that had come in and like just decimated the Zinfandel. So I remember we brought in like 1 pick of Zinfandel that year, and we were dumping the bins into the hopper. Cause so for everybody that doesn't know, like we pick the fruit, we bring it to the winery, we weigh it, and then we dump it into a hopper or a vessel that will feed into a destemmer, so we can knock all the berries off of the cluster, and the stems come out, those go into a compost pile, and then all of what we have, the must now is what we call it, M-U-S-T, and that's your skin, pulp, seed, and juice. And that's what we're going to ferment. There you go. There's a picture of a receiving hopper, as we call it. Anyway, so we're dumping this in, and like, I'm like, what the fuck is this? There were clouds like coming up. So like just as it was hitting the hopper, it was clouds of mildew.
Oh shit.
And so we went ahead and fermented it, and we're like it was like a super funky fermentation. I think it was either 2010 or 2011. That one might have been 2010. And so we plated it, like put it under a microscope, and you could actually see the mold, the mildew, like the structure of the mildew under glass that was like tightening everything up. Like it was almost like a spider web throughout all of the juice that was fermenting. Oh, it was all mildew. It was weird.
So then you weren't...
And it smelled moldy the whole time, the fermentation and the finished wine.
You weren't able to move forward with that then, I'm guessing.
No, we made it. We finished it. We drained it and pressed it. And it's not like that's not an issue that's going to, you're not inoculating the winery with something bad, right?
That's why I want to make that point too. Like some people that might be like, oh, mildew.
And like, that goes everywhere and fucks up all the wine. No, it's just consolidated to that tank. Now, once we drained and pressed that, it looked like that, but it was just like the whole fucking plate art.
You saw the picture?
And so we started running trials, because like this is the fun part of like those challenging lots. Mm-hmm. So you're like, well, we're deeming this unsalvageable, so we're either going to destroy it or sell it, or let's experiment with it and try some new shit. So we started like running different filters for this. And it was plugging the shit out of filters, because like it was like it hit your first plates and like capture whatever, then the next, and as it got down to a smaller size, you'd end up like plugging those too. But it was just all of that mildew, and the funny thing was, once we got that out, the wine didn't taste like mold. anymore. So it was just like, oh, that was literally just something that was like in the fruit. Once we figured out exactly how to filter it, then it worked out okay.
Yeah.
We didn't use that a lot, but still, it was like we learned, like, if we ever have a really, like, a worse than 2011 vintage, like, and there's mildew everywhere, I'm sure we'll go back into our books and be like, what did we do in 2011 or 2010 to figure this out, and then try to employ that and see if we can salvage something.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's pretty awesome for like perseverance of like the farmers, of like what you guys have to do every year. I think it's like I feel like it's somehow like some people might kind of like smile or something, that, you know, I feel like obviously when you come out of it, you're going to be like, this is going to be the greatest vintage every year. Not really. And then people will be like, oh, maybe there was like fires, maybe there was like this excess of like cool climates or rains, or there was a pandemic, or there's like all this stuff that's like affecting the vines and everything like that. But it's what you guys have to do, because there's no answer of, did you ever have a year where you were like, we couldn't do it this year?
Like, just
like, you know what I mean? Like it was too hard. Like, for example,
no.
You just have to like keep adapting. And
you had, the funny thing was, in the pandemic was like, you know, not only did we have the pandemic in 2020, which really, like, the ability to work as a team as we always had was decimated to a degree. Like, I mean, yeah, we were all essential and we were all kind of like in our pods. We created our like 6-person pods within. But it just was so fucking dumb. Like, we're all like, really like, hey, David, don't get closer than 10 feet, otherwise we'll get written up. You know, like, I mean, it was such dumb shit. Anyways, so what happened that year? Not only was it the pandemic, which gave huge insecurities to wine producers, right? Especially if you're a small, high-end producer in Napa Valley.
Yes.
So they're all like, well, I'm not selling my wine. Nobody can visit the wineries.
No.
So that was shut down. So if your business model is pretty much all direct or wine club, and how do you capture those wine club members? Well, they got to come to your winery, enjoy the wines, hear the story, buy into it, and then sign up for the wine club. So that was decimated. People were pulling back on their spending. So a lot of wine club members would drop off from these clubs, just thinking like, I got to, focus on what I really need to focus on right now, like this luxury product of wine. I don't need to spend $200 a bottle until we see which way is up. And then you had the fires on top of it in 2020. Now the fires gave the perfect excuse for anybody who wanted to take a vintage off to just be like, they would just call up their insurance and be like, yep, I'm pretty sure we got smoke taint, smoke damage. The crop is not salvageable, so we're just going to take a crop insurance claim. Honestly, I think that was all bullshit. We ran through 2020, and I mean, there were a few lots that had smoke damage that we didn't pick.
Yeah, I mean,
but the vast majority of the shit that was out in the field was good, and I mean, like, really good.
Yeah,
we made a great 2020 vintage in Napa. We're actually, it's all sold through. Like, nobody even mentioned like, oh, this was the smoke taint vintage. Like, you guys had a fire. Because no, the wine didn't taste like it had any smoke taint.
You did bring up a good thing though about like vintages, and something to note that I saw with aging is that so if you were saying holding on to a bottle of wine, that like sometimes it's important to know what was going on that year to know how it's going to structurally hold up. Yeah. So like you're saying, if it was a 2011, which was, like known as like your hardest year. Yeah. That like a wine like that, the aging process is not going to hold up as well as a 97.
Opposite.
Or opposite.
Yeah. So the 11 and like 98 and 11 have been showing that they hold up better than those super ripe vintages. Oh. So like the 97 being a super ripe vintage, or even like you go 04 or 06, like those were pretty damn ripe vintages. I'm not saying they don't hold up, but they just don't express themselves as well. They don't have like as much tension as they get older. They get a little flabby, overly soft, and so these kind of like lower maturity vintages, if you want to call it that, they tend to like maintain more tension, too much so in the beginning. Now, if you're a producer who's going to say like, I want to produce a wine like that needs to be aged for 10 years at minimum until it's like optimum drinking time. Yeah. Then cellar it yourself and release it when you think it's right. That's the one quarrel I have with it. Is like, people need to be like, stand behind what you believe. And if you're willing to do that, I know people like don't want to tie up their capital for 10 years, vintage upon vintage, like they need cash flow. I get the business part of it, but at the same time, it's like, if you truly believe in that, then that's what you should do. You should strive to do that, or at least hold back some of your production. Like, we'll hold back a couple hundred cases of certain productions of ours. Like, this is going to be a seller release.
Yeah.
Like, when I know that the 2014 is completely gone out of the market, right? Like, it's out of our warehouse. The distributors don't have any inventory of it, and we know that there's none on the shelf, and it's mostly been consumed. There might be a small percentage of people who have cellared some of that for a long period of time, or planning to for a long period of time, but the vast majority of people aren't going to do that. So at some point here in like the next, I'd give it like 2 years, we're probably going to start doing some seller releases, just to show people like, this is what a 2014 and 2015 vintage looks like with, say, 10 years of age on it.
Sweet.
And Taylor Lane was built, the whole thing was
That's
built.
That's what I was going to say.
That.
Taylor Lane, is that how you built it that way?
Magnums only. Mags, they age better, and then we release it when it's ready. So, I mean, that's a fun project. Like, we had 2011 was our first vintage, and I don't want to say we skipped. We are holding the 2012 and 13 because those were ripe vintages, but they just weren't quite ready. So we were tasting through like the next vintages after the 11. Like, is there one that's ready to release right now? And the one that tasted like on point for us was the 2014. So we just released the 2014. So that's called like 7 to 8 years of bottle age. Probably about 2 years of barrel age before that. And the wine is like tasting beautifully. Now, in a year or 2 years' time, is it going to be, do we go back to the 2012 or the 13? Those two wines, they might not be released for, 20 years.
Yeah.
Pinot holds up great, though. Pinot's got good acid, good structure. So it definitely, it is an age-worthy wine. One of, if not the best reds for age-worthiness.
Dude, nice. I mean, I think like that was a good... thorough harvest update, man. Like, so I think like in a roundabout way we can see that. So okay, so and correct me, man, if I'm wrong, but it sounds like to me though you're saying that even with the hardships of what Mother Nature provides through the harvest, as you overcome them, it pays off.
I think it always does, but there's always a new challenge, right? So
yeah,
you go with what you've learned in the past. This is where like experience and wisdom.
Yeah.
It's like, just get started on something, because you're going to fuck it up no matter what. At some point, you're going to fuck something up. No, whatever you do, it could be woodworking as your hobby, and you're making a table and you fuck up the entire table. And you're like, okay, well, I learned from that mistake. So I think that's what I'd tell people is like, just start doing whether it's a hobby or your profession, start taking some small risks, learning how far you could push it, and that experience is going to pay you back in like a huge way at some point in the future. That's what it is.
Yeah.
Push.
It's kind of like what you gotta do with your body, dude.
Be the pusher man.
You know what I mean?
Push a man.
Push a man. Push a man. You know what I mean, dude? I've been doing like these cold showers, dude.
Oh, dude, I heard about those. So I actually just started, but I'm ending my shower with 4 minutes of cold water.
Oh, so you started doing it?
Yeah.
Is it because you heard I was doing it?
Honestly, is it because
you heard I was doing it?
No, is this an old man? Is this an old dude thing? Like, we hit 40, and then you start taking cold showers?
Dude, no.
It tightens up. It tightens up your skin.
Dude, everyone's all about the ice baths right now. I mean, this is all going through. And look, I'm a big believer. I finished the book Wim Hof Method, and I just totally dove in, dude. What he brings up a good point is that we're just getting too comfortable. Right? So you're constantly, we're going through this life. And, and you know, too, like you have your certain temperature that you want your house. And it's always just, and so like obviously hot water has always been our most comfort, but we're not stressing the body that it needs to be stressed to becoming more strength. And I feel like it just goes back to fitness, right? It's like, that's what we continue to do with our muscles when we're breaking them down or ripping them apart so they build up to be a bit stronger. So
you're creating a challenge that, because Mother Nature, because the comforts that we live in our society, by and large, throughout the world today,
I knew you'd like this,
are just not there.
Yeah.
So
because you don't like to be comfortable. Like, I mean,
no, you should never be comfortable. You're gonna be if you're gonna be complacent in life, you're just gonna. I mean, that's You always need to challenge. If you need to fabricate your own challenge, then yeah. So you think that's a big part of this. That's the Wim Hof piece of it you're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, it's a big piece that, like, I think you should do this book. I really recommend it for people to read because what is great about it is that, you know, he was kind of seen as this anomaly. He was seen as this superhuman, and that's why all these studies started on him. And then his big thing and what he wanted to push was, like, he's like, no, I can teach people how to do this. And it was really through, like, breathing and cold, and then, like, it comes to mind. So he has, like, a breathing technique that you can do with this, like a meditation and breathing. It's just like a deep breathing. It has like some breath holds involved. Yeah. And it's something that you kind of do. And then you combine that with like the cold. And like through a lot of these studies and stuff like that, he's been shown to be like put in like ice tanks and everything. But one of the most unique things they had this one experiment that stood out to me, and they actually injected him with like a type of like a bacteria or something to see if he could actually fight it off himself through his practice. Yeah. And he was able to do so. And these are all scientific, these are all like research and everything. And so, and I don't know if you could look up that study, Art, so I could get to the specific of what he was actually injected with. But the cool thing about it is that after that experiment happened, he was actually able to get like about 4 other people, and he's like, I'm going to teach them my method, and then they're going to be able to do the same thing that I just did. Okay. And he was able to do that. I mean, dude, this guy is like an animal, man. Like, I mean, he's a force of nature with like the hikes he's done and stuff like that through the cold. But
since I started doing these cold, like 4-minute ins to a shower, so it's like I'll do my warm shower, get all cleaned off and everything, and then I'll just crank it to cold. Yeah. And just like sit it like let it run over different parts of my body, whatever. Right. That's I don't have an ice bath, so like.
Yeah. And I'm going to say this on this podcast because then you can't get out of it. You and I, because I've been wanting to do this, we're going to build ourselves our homemade ice bath.
I'm not taking a bath with you, buddy. I'm sorry.
Look, it's just once. I can get a big one. And it's like 18 and a half cubic feet. There's enough room for both of us.
Wow, that sounds big.
Yeah, you know, I lay on you. You on the no, okay. Your bottom, I'm top.
No skin to skin contact. There's no, because then it takes away from the ice bath.
But listen to me though, because I did a lot of research on this too, like that you could build them. That people have been doing them out of these like deep freezers, ice chests. Okay, so you basically get the ice chest. You like seal the seams with like a silicone, water resistant, and then you make it fully so it could hold the water, and then you basically can get like these temperature control.
Like you don't need to put ice in there.
Nah, you get a temperature control. That will basically keep it at. You could get this online too. I think the temperature control could be around like $50, and then you also get for $30 some kind of a sanitation, like a ozone or or what's the UV. Okay. And so then you have your 2 components there, and so once you get the water that cold, then it will stay. So you could probably keep it at like 40 degrees. Okay. And then you basically have like your ice bath, and you can get this done for like under like $1,000, which right now like you have ice baths selling for $3,000 to $5,000.
Okay, so you can do your own, do it yourself.
Do it yourself. Watch these videos.
So I gotta ask though, is there a difference between being in like an ice bath with ice chunks? It's going to be like, 30 degrees, and being at 40 degrees.
From stuff I read, you can actually reap benefits, I believe, at like around like 50 degrees. So you can start like getting benefits, and it's the same thing with the cold showers, right? Like you're doing 4 minutes, that's awesome, but you can actually start reaping the benefits at like 2 minutes.
Yeah, I don't think it's down at 40. Like I mean, just coming out like cold water coming out of the. I think it's probably like closer to 50.
No. Yeah.
So, but still, like I'm standing there for 4 minutes. I'm like,
how long have you been doing it?
Not even a week. I just happened to start fucking doing this. Like,
yeah, right, dude. You're trying to copy me, dude. Yeah, you did. Because after I finished Hour 75, I jumped into this.
I'm challenging my body by drinking coffee with sparkling water in it.
Okay.
Again, this is
and you're
partly,
drinking this too. This is part of it. This is part of the
part
method.
of the Wim Hof method.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, it's not. Don't quote me on that. Okay.
Is this the clip you were looking for?
Sorry.
Did you
yes. Okay. Just really quick. Injected. So he was injected with endotoxin.
And his body fought it off by just continuing to be this like.
Yeah. So he was, and so how Wim Hof and 12 other people got injected with it. So he did it first.
It sounds like an orgy.
And then I thought you'd like it, because you like endotoxin orgies.
Yes.
So yeah, this was the method, or not the method. Sorry, the experiment that I was like referring to. I don't know, Art, if you wanted to play a clip, but anyways, you get the idea.
Yeah, it's 13 minutes,
So,
but his body and all these 12 other people,
and his breathing, and was able to fight off himself. Now, dude, this is something to think about, and I know we're probably gonna have to start wrapping it up here, but the interesting thing about this whole thing is that, dude, pharmaceutical companies. Like, I can't believe what they're thinking about with all this stuff really just like flying through social media and stuff. You can't control the knowledge, right?
Yeah.
And so now all this stuff is happening. Yeah. So people are just like, wait, hold on a second. Like, can I start? Because he even touches on stuff like cancer and people having just even problems like physical like
any ailments.
Yes, thank you. And not being like there was a guy I could never do a push up, and then next thing through his breathing exercises he starts doing 120. Like, and so it's really cool to start thinking like, whoa, dude, through simply breathing and cold, if we could start like doing this stuff. So,
all right, well, anyways, I better get into it more. And okay, I do want to make sure everybody knows that we're not being paid by Wim Hof.
No. Oh, yeah, thank you. Fuck, I know, we got just, we're not being paid. When we talk, dude, we don't sponsor anything. When you see me drinking a protein drink, Rebel.
They spelled it wrong.
With 2 B's.
With 2
bad
B's.
bitch.
I'm Stanley spelled with a C.
They did not pay me to do this, okay? But this is what I've been drinking too. This is the plant powdered elixir. It has no, I'm not gonna do it.
I think it's really cool. So I am gonna try. I don't know if I'll be able to get into the whole ice bath thing just yet, but like maybe after harvest. But
we're gonna build them.
We're gonna build them. Fine, I'll fucking.
It's on there, okay? Everyone, you heard us. So then you can just chime in with comments or send us emails and be like, "Hey, has Joe built his ice bath yet? Has Joe started Hard 75 yet?"
All right. So
has Joe done his rap song yet?
Oh, that's right.
Oh yeah, all by the end of the year. Okay.
We got to wrap
Horrible
this up.
Bosses.
Horrible bosses.
We're jumping in right now.
Jumping in right now. Here we go.
Horrible.bosses@coppercane.com. Send us your stories, and we will be anonymous. It is anonymous. Joe likes to read them and then talk about how he could be a better boss. And sometimes
fuck you.
What? Okay, awesome.
All right. Yeah. So here we go. So when I was 19, I landed a gig at this super hipster clothing store of all places. They made me the assistant manager, which was kind of a weird twist for someone who couldn't care less about selling clothes. At first, things were surprisingly smooth. I even got some pats on the back for boosting sales. Totally against my nature, by the way. But around 2 months in, I stumbled upon a treasure trove of emails between the store manager, the one who hired me, and the district manager. Turns out the shop had been sinking like a stone for ages, and I was brought in as the sacrificial lamb to appease the district manager. That's a shitty way to... Man. Okay. Naturally, I did what any sane person would do. I wrapped up my cash duties, collected all those incriminating emails, and boldly scrawled, "I quit" across them in bright red Sharpie. I left my keys on the desk and made my grand exit. Fast forward a few months, a mutual friend from the store drags me back there. I chat with the manager who royally screwed me over. We hash things out, and I'm ready to put it all behind me. Or so I thought. 8 months later, I get a call from the police about an incident from my time at the store. I figured they needed a statement about some shoplifting nonsense that went down during my tenure. So like a total sucker, I stroll down to the police station, only to find out that I'm under arrest for the theft of under $5,000. Fantastic. As it turns out, that fateful day when I thought we'd made amends, the store manager had quietly called the cops, accusing me of swiping some $5,000 junk. Or $5,000 junk. No inventory, no security cameras, perfect setup for a he said, she said showdown. Cue a year and a half of court dates, legal advice that basically told me I was toast because I was a disgruntled former employee, and a looming criminal record. Eventually, I took the deal called alternative measures. It's a first offense lifeline. You admit guilt, make a charitable donation, craft a better decision-making collage. Yes, you heard that right. A better decision-making collage. This sounds like something you would do in California.
I know, the collage thing.
Well, we're not going to arrest you, but we'll want you to make a collage.
No, wait, hold on a sec. I think I can give you a little more info on this.
And pen an apology to the injured party. So there I was, a 21-year-old dude doing arts and crafts and writing apology letters instead of jail time. Now that's what you call a truly horrible former boss.
I have a hint that this could be a little Canadian.
Dude, okay.
Not that the person's a little Canadian, but the story itself got some.
So
a collage.
I mean, yeah, a collage. Yeah.
If you could build.
So first of all, I got to ask, what happened to the $5,000 of loot, so to speak? Was that something that? I mean, first of all, this.
No, I think it was a setup.
Yeah, it's a setup, but you gotta have something like. He said,
show,
she said, like. You know, they can't, if they don't have security cameras that are showing this guy actually walking out of the store, or there was like no mishaps with inventory, or like you can't prove this stuff. That's the problem. I think that this dude made the mistake of taking this alternative measures deal. This sounds Canadian. Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
Is it a Canadian? You can't tell me. Okay. Chris is the keeper of secrets.
I can't talk about it.
So, let's take this at face value, as if this is the truth of what actually went down, and this person actually ended up taking this alternative measures approach because they felt like there was no other route, and maybe they just wanted all the legal shit. This is one of the problems, right? So, if somebody comes at you, well, you're gonna have to lawyer up. Now, you're gonna be putting money into the legal system, right, to defend yourself.
Yeah.
Up until hopefully the case sways your way, and part of that winning is that they pay your legal fees, so you don't end up in a goddamn hole, and you probably end up leaving with nothing more than you entered with, right?
Yeah.
So it's not like if he didn't actually steal $5,000 worth of stuff or cash, then like he's not getting away with that. So but like there's no benefit, like, you know, to keeping it going. So I guess I can understand why they would take this deal, which I would call like a plea deal rather than alternative measures. I'm gonna have to look up alternative measures now.
Well,
but so if the boss actually did this and like kind of coerced this person in, I would actually think there's a big ass lawsuit there waiting to happen.
But we don't want. But does everyone always have the support and the knowledge to know how to like fight these things and go about it? I mean, that happens all the time, right? In the law, like they'll just like take it.
Yeah, but you got to find a lawyer who's like willing to pony up the time, right?
Yeah.
And then they take a portion of your winnings. Then what do you?
Yeah.
So if you're like, I'm countersuing and this is what I want, and say it's like whatever, say it's $1 million, and then the law firm's going to take 50-60% of that or whatever, and you're going to have all this time, and it's, you know, a bad way to create a reputation in any business, right? It's like, oh, now you're not just disgruntled, you're also, you know, ready to, you know, like lawyer up and fuck the store over.
Yeah.
And word travels in small circles and stuff. So, I mean, we hear about it in the wine business. You got a bad name you've created for yourself, you'd end up finding your way out of this industry one way or another just because people are like, I'm not working with this guy.
Do we have an example of a winery?
I'm not going to give you an example. Yeah. I could give you one example, not doing any names. The one example I will give you is this dude who was running a vineyard management company, and then he took over an old winery, and then, and so he was working for some really high end individuals here, right?
Yeah,
grape growing, winemaking, whatever. And so he was actually stealing their fruit. It's one of his foremen that brought him forward.
Yeah, he
was stealing their fruit, which is, you know, called like $10,000 to $15,000 a ton fruit, and he'd be like, "Oh, okay, we picked 10, but like I'm delivering 1 to myself." And then he was fucking with the tag, so he'd actually have like a wine that was not the wine that he said it was. He would just change it and be like, this isn't Lodi Syrah anymore. Now it's Napa Valley Cabernet, and then he'd sell it as Napa Valley Cabernet. Shit caught up to him real quick, and I think he did some prison time. As he should have. And he's out of the industry.
Whoa.
Fuck that guy.
Okay.
I met with him a couple times, and dude, I will tell you that I could tell there was something stinky about this dude. Just a con man.
Yeah.
Yeah, anyways.
And his name was what?
Okay. So all right. So if this boss actually did this shit, then yeah, that is bad. That's the shit that'll come back and haunt you. I mean, let a dead dog lie, right?
Ooh,
like, why try to be so vile that you want to come? I mean, this is like Hillary Clinton shit. This is like this is like, I'm gonna pretend like everything's water under the bridge, and then I'm gonna fucking put a brand new pair of shoes on you and have you murdered in the park as if you were on a run. Like, that's okay.
Wow, that went dark real quick, Joe.
Yeah, sorry. I'm just trying to relate this guy. Hopefully he's listening. All right, so that wraps it up for Go With Your Palate. Thank you all for coming and listening. Hope you enjoyed the harvest update.
I need to take a cold shower. Peace.